everyone. I am so happy to be back. I want to start by saying thank you for everyone who is messaging me on Twitter and a couple of messages that were sent to me on Discord and through stream. As I was gone, as some of you may know, I was away for some dental surgery and I'm mostly recovered now. My mouth, jaw still feeling a little bit sore. Um, so I'm only going to be doing a short-ish video today where we're finally going to be going over our set 5 Vanguard Zero global tier list. So I'm really excited to jump into that, but I really do want to say thank you for everyone who's supporting me, everyone who is patient, and the people who are messaging me asking me when I was going to get back to streaming and bringing out some content. So thank you for checking in on me, and I hope today that you happen to like the content that we're going to be bringing to you and that you like this tier list. The one advantage of having that dental work done and not being able to do anything for a little while is that I got to play an incredible amount of Vanguard Zero. So I was doing a lot of friend fights. I was doing a lot of ranked fights. And I was really testing every single one of these decks. Like I probably, while the time I was in recovery, I probably put a good solid 30 hours into the game and testing what some of these decks are going to do. And so today we're going to be taking a look at the tier list, not from like a tournament mode or going in to, any of the independent tournaments, but I want to focus it on what you should be bringing when you look at ranked mode and when you're trying to climb, because that is what everyone is focusing on right now. So without any further ado, we're going to jump right in here. I believe on like set 4, I don't think I missed any decks. I actually have a few decks that we're just going to drop down here in tier 4 because they're irrelevant, and one asterisk deck that we're going to be talking about today that's going to be the one prediction of where I think it's going to go, since it comes out this month. So we're just going to go right in order. And we're going to start right here. We have our beast deities. Now, whether you call this beast deities yourself or the beast deity slash razor mix, they both kind of are very similar to me, but I think it's a solid tier 2 deck still. Beast deities is still the beast deity stand abilities are still very strong. The search abilities is still very strong. Perfect razor is still very strong. So I think it's a good solid tier 2 addition, and that it's safe to be bringing into ranked mode right now, but it's not sitting up here in kind of this tier 1 area. Blau. I mean, everyone wants to talk about how how amazing Blau is. I see like everyone who talks about Nova Grapplers wants Blau to be the best, and like you want us to get up here in tier 0. Blau is fun. It's a lot of fun, and it can steal games out of nowhere, but it's also super inconsistent and lacking some of the power and additional things that can happen. So ultimately, I end up putting it here as a tier 3 deck that can steal games. So it's like a super budget deck and a great deck to get into ranked and start doing, because you can steal those games. So kind of that area between Legend 0 and Legend 20 where you're getting those 30 points and not losing as many. Blau can be a really good choice for beginners who are just getting in. And having it now isn't bad, because in the future, like we haven't seen the support for it yet, but in the future, Blau does get some very good support. Coco. Coco is the new Oracle Think Tank deck that did come out in the last set, and it is going to jump in here for me as a solid tier 2 deck. This is another deck that I find very efficient for climbing ranked. Me personally, I like it a little bit more than the Beast Deity version, than Beast Deities. I like to see 9 crit. This deck has incredible draw power, especially if you hit all of your chains. You keep your soul built up to the point where you can then pop it out and draw 3 cards in one turn. It's just got incredible talent, incredible abilities. You have the ability to just run 9 crits and just steal games with it. So it's a strong tier 2 deck. If your playstyle is good, it can be near the top of tier 2 or mid tier 2. Maybe your playstyle might want to put Beast Deities a little higher. For me personally, my playstyle and the way I play the game allows this to be Coco. So just to mention that, some of this is going to be colored, obviously, by my play preference and the way that I play the game. Ooh, we're getting into what's going to be a controversial one already, and that is Dark Irregulars. Which, if you went back and saw my tier 4, I had it as a very tier 3 deck, and even when I was originally thinking about this, I had this like low tier 3, high tier 4. I Dark Irregulars was my first major Vanguard Zero deck that I really saw success with, and I picked it back up again. And I am winning 6 to 7 matches to every single one that I lose. So I am going to put like it's either the to me either the very top of tier 3 or the bottom of tier 2, and I will be placing it in the bottom of tier 2. I think it is very well positioned in the current meta. It's great at hitting cross ride numbers. Amon hits cross ride numbers. NLK hits cross ride numbers. When you get the charging going, Doreen the Thruster is one of if not one probably the best booster in the set right now. You've got the recyclable heal, which is so important right now, and the ability to pull the grade 2s, lots of retire. So, kind of with this, and I'm going to be doing a video on how to play this in the current meta. With this, basically, your idea against limit break decks is to push them to 3 and then just leave them there and control their resources until they have nothing really left to capitalize with, and then really just go off back on them. But it's a super strong deck. I think it's very well positioned in the format right now. Definitely bottom of tier 1 or top of tier 3 there. Dote, no surprise here. Dote, super powerful deck. Definitely one of the best in the format right now. It is going to be a tier 1 deck, and this is going to be a tier 1 deck for a couple of months still at minimum. So if you've got Dote built, you can kind of save up for whatever clan that you want moving forward. It's just a super strong deck that's not going away anytime soon. Let's look at the Enigman for Dimensional Police. Unfortunately, as much as I want to put it with its stands and everything that it can do, I want to say it's tier 3. The reality is Dimension Police is just a completely underpowered deck right now. It might be insulting to place it on tier 4, but it's just not doing anything. The odd time it can steal a game away if you're running against a lower deck, but against the tier 1, the tier 0, and basically most of the tier 2, it just doesn't do anything consistently enough. And since so much of ranked right now consists of these tier 0, tier 1 ranked decks, I can't with good conscience give it anything better. Here we have the Galahad Ride Chain. We're not even going to talk about that. This deck just isn't played anymore. It just happened to be in my images here. The only time you're going to see this is the random person who still thinks that you can successfully VP farm. I'm not placing Garamore here because I want to make it clear when you look at Garamore here what I'm going to be talking about, because Garamore itself isn't run, but I want to talk about the Garamore MLB variant that is run. And the Garamore MLB variant is not as good as the MLB variant, but it is still a tier 1 deck. Like very bottom of tier 1, maybe top of tier 2, but it still runs MLB. Plus, it's got the Garamore package in there, so it's less consistent against MLB and against some of the other decks. But what it's more resilient to is decks like Dote and decks like Narukami that just can do a lot of retiring, and even Dark Irregulars. It's really strong against those decks that just put on a lot of pressure, do a lot of retiring because it's able to self-generate so easily. Then we've got Waterfall here. This is Kagero Good Stuff. Kagero Good Stuff is still exactly what it is, so this is just minus Dote. It's still a good stuff deck and easily a top contender in tier 2. This is original Grand Blue. It's going to go down in tier 4 as being irrelevant. MLB. Last month, when I did my tier 4, I did have MLB sitting in global on tier 1. We didn't have our tier 0. We left it on tier 1 because we didn't know how global was going to react compared to Japan. But ultimately, MLB is the god tier deck that we currently have. It has super amounts of consistency. Yes, you can beat it. Almost any deck can beat it with the right luck, with the right things going its way. But it is an extraordinarily difficult deck to build. And the fact that there are decks that are tier 1 and higher than what they probably should be, because this is played so much, like Dote, if we fast forward into the future, where MLB is still in Japan, even with all these brand new decks getting support. MLB is still a tier 1 deck, still tier 1. But Dote is a deck that, while still strong, does start to fall down a bit when it starts to play against a wider variety of the meta. So the fact that this deck just demands decks that counter it makes it a tier 0 deck. Neo Nectar, definitely still like. I definitely still think it is in the tier 2. I think when set 6 comes out, you're gonna see this stumble down to kind of the tier 3. But if you're really good, if you have the complete Neo Nectar set, it's an absolutely fantastic defensive clan, and I still think it sits in that tier 2 environment. Here we got Shadow Paladins PBO. In my opinion, it is the second best deck that you can run out there right now. It is the top of tier 1 and the main MLB competition. I think it's better than Dote generally across the entire field, where Dote has a better matchup against MLB. Shadow Paladins has a better matchup against the field. All right, we have Reindeer, which I do believe, I'm not going to put this in tier 4. Reindeer is definitely a tier 3 deck. It's just a high variance deck. When the Bermuda Triangle deck, it is really missing a finisher, is what it's truly missing. But when Bermuda Triangle pops off and everything goes your way, it's an extraordinarily solid deck. Like a Bermuda Triangle Reindeer deck that pops off correctly is operating at like a high tier 2 level. The problem is it is so inconsistent and so skill intensive to get that, and so luck intensive to get all of the right things, that you can't really put it above the tier 3 section. Here we have Perfect Razor, which in my opinion, again, I'm not sure if it's either top 1 or 2 of tier 2. Just it individually is, in my opinion, a better deck than the Beast Deity Hybrid. I love what the Beast Deity Hybrid does, but I think it dilutes the abilities of Perfect Razor. Now, Beast Deity, when it gets all of its support, while it's not going to become the best deck in the world, it will be the best Nova Grapplers deck that is out there. So it's still definitely worth making sure you have the Beast Deity pieces. And I definitely think as more sets come out, this Perfect Razor might even start to fall down this a little bit. But right now, out of these decks that I have sit in tier 2, I'd say Perfect Razor is the best. Then we have Riviere, which a lot of people put in tier 4. I'm going to put this also in tier 3. I think Riviere, in many ways, is more consistent than Reindeer, especially with the buff she got, but not always as finishing power because you are running with a little bit of a different playstyle. But I still think that the Bermuda Triangles are actually tier 3 and given much less credit than what they should get. All right, now we're going to look at Spike Brothers, which is, if you know, last month I had them as one of my tier 1 decks. I am definitely knocking them down to being kind of right here in the tier 2. I'm going to put them a little bit above. I think Razors has a better matchup against some of the newer decks that have come in, and Spike Brothers definitely has some of the worst matchups. Now, we're putting an asterisk on this because this is for the next 7 or 8 days. We actually have the other Spike Brothers deck here, which is going to come out in the back half of July, and I'm going to make some speculation on where that's going to fall in at the end of the video. Tsukiyomi, still a solid tier 1 deck. Tom is absolutely fantastic. Your ability to stack, if you know how to play Suki, then Suki is absolutely a tier 1 deck still. No doubt about it. It's the best way to play Oracle Think Tank. Pale Moon, I think Pale Moon is the top of tier 3 right now. In 3 weeks, when it gets its support, it's going to pop up here and be a tier 1, tier 2 deck. But as it is, the Golden Beast Tamer deck is still a solid deck, but definitely the top of the tier 3. Angel Feather. Here's an interesting one. I really, really enjoy Angel Feather, specifically Shamshill, not the Ride Chain. Please do not run the Ride Chain. Do not run, the grade 3 that heals. It's too slow, it's too defensive, and it gets run over by a lot of the meta right now. But running the Shamseal, if you can get it, it's a very, very expensive deck. There's a lot of triple rares in there across all of your rarities. But it's really, really powerful. It's really strong, and it definitely falls. You know what? Actually, I would do this. Coco's getting pushed farther and farther down for me here. Yeah, it definitely falls in this tier 2 meta. Actually, I even like this better. Definitely falls in this tier 2 meta, and is a solid deck to pick up. Um, uh, when we get Metatron later, I do believe that it is a strong deck. I don't believe it's like the top tier. Like to me, it's going to stay kind of in this tier 2, but it's a lot of fun and it's a very different play style than anything that's being offered, which does make it worth it. All right, now we've got the new Grand Blue Clan Cocytus. And this one was really, really hard for me to figure out where I wanted to rank. Like sometimes it feels like a strong tier 2 deck, and other times it feels like a tier 3 deck. And I know eventually it's just going to drop off the board. So with that in mind, I'm going to put it as kind of like one of the top tier 3 decks right now. If you have the complete playset and you're efficient at running it, it can kind of make that tier 2 list. But I think it's kind of the top of tier 3 right now. Even with Cocytus, everything like that, it still just feels like Grand Blue is missing a true and real finisher in comparison to what else is out here and what else we have been given. And because it's going to fall off the list so fast, I don't want to have people getting a bunch of hope in it and where it can go. But if you're really, really good with it, you could still bring it in there. Ezel, tier 1 deck. Again, you're going to see this MLB Garamore is going to keep getting pushed down the tier 1, like to the point where I might even, actually, I'm going to just do it now. No, with MLB, yeah, it's still going to be there. Ezel, super good deck. I don't believe it's better than what came before it. It is really, really good. So it would be there. Now we're going to into Great Nature, which unfortunately, Great Nature, this is Locke and this is Leopold. Great Nature's fun, it's there, but realistically, it's just not very good right now. Like, I can't give it credit of breaking into the tier 2. I don't think it's a tier 2 deck. I think it's tier 3. I definitely think it's worth getting your Leopolds and everything so that when Polaris comes out, potentially as early as next month, depending on if they do a combined set, latest in September, it'll jump up and it's going to be, a tier 1, tier 2 deck. But right now, it's both versions of what you can build kind of just sit in that tier 3 zone. Then we've got our second version of Gold Paladin, which is Spring Breeze, which I'm going to put right beside Ezel. I think they're equal in power. It's just a difference in the way that they play. And this all comes down to your starter. So when you're playing the Ezel deck, your starter is trying to cheat Ezel out on turn 2. When you're playing the Spring Breeze version, you're trying to cheat Palamore out early, get in the early crits, and then move to Ezel as your second ride. So it is a difference in the start of the game, which is why I do separate them out. Then there's Narukami, which I am actually going to put up here again in the tier 1 zone, a little bit above Tsukiyomi, and I do believe it is better than the Gold Paladin versions that are out there. It has a lot of strengths. Dungaree, Vermilion are both very, very, very powerful cards with great limit breaks. It's got a lot of great support. The retire, the ability to ignore intercepts. It's probably one of the strongest single attack, non-rush attack combined with some fantastic retire. And it's also worth investing in now because when we get the Dungaree chain, the break or the cross ride for Dungaree, it is super good. In my opinion, from what I've seen so far, I would argue that the only deck that might be better than it is the Ezel deck, but it's definitely going to be one of the most fun decks to play when that comes out. So this is where, if we just looked at a snapshot of Global today, where I put everything. So I would love, before I get into the next part, if you want to drop into the comments below and let me know what you think about this is the tier list for Global today. Let me know if there's something you would reposition, or maybe, where your strengths are, you might find something better. But this is where I kind of see the tier list. A couple interchangeable things in tier 2. It's hard to pull up, a couple of minor things in tier 3. These decks I'm fairly confident are just irrelevant right now. The MLB Garamore Variant, you can argue if it's a tier 2, tier 1 deck, but because it's MLB, I want to put it in tier 1. Because as we've seen, just lowering the consistency of MLB does not make MLB irrelevant. So that's kind of where I have it. But now we have to talk about the wild card. And that is the fact that we're going to get Dudley Emperor in the back half of July. So there are going to be people who are crazy and go after it early. I guarantee you, I will assemble this deck on day 1. Within 3 hours of that event being released, I will have this full deck built. Spikes is one of my main clans, and I can guarantee you, people like Ride the Avatar. They're definitely going to have this deck completed really, really quickly, and some of our other big streamers are going to have this deck completed very, very quickly. And it's going to be interesting because this is going to be a format that Dudley Emperor hasn't existed in yet, because it just came out last month in Japan. So if on August 1st we don't get a dual set 6 and 7 release, then we're actually going to have a month where this exists in a meta that we've never seen it in before. So all we can do is speculate on how it's going to be. Now, I've played a little bit of it in the Japanese version. I completely free to play it just to get some testing in. Now, it is super strong. Like if I were to go and look at a lot of the meta lists and everything like that, we lose tier 0. There's no tier 0 in the Japanese version. There's like a very, very small, like 3 deck tier 1. And then a much more expanded tier 2. And with all of the new decks that are out there, Dudley Emperor sits like right at the top of tier 2, like the top 3 of tier 2, with all of the new decks that are out there. So when we take that into account, that later on that there's going to be like 3 tier 1 decks and Dudley Emperor is going to be there, and the only tier 1 deck that is in Japan right now that is here is MLB. I truly believe that Dudley Emperor is going to be, if you know how to pilot it when it comes out, the second or third best deck in the format. But it is going to be extremely powerful and extremely hard to beat for those 2 weeks. Like, what this deck can do is absolutely crazy. So this is an asterisk. This is a hypothesis. I'm not sure. I can guarantee you it's going to be tier 1, and it's going to be, easily one of the top 4 decks. There's no way that it is not better than at least here. It's better than everything past here, guaranteed. In Japan right now, it's better than these 2 decks as well. So that's why I'm putting it here. The only reason I'm putting an asterisk and not 100% confident that I'm saying that, Dudley Emperor is going to be here is because it's a different meta. So Dudley Emperor might be really good against decks that are in that meta that don't exist here, but those decks suppress decks that maybe are stronger here. So, you don't see as much Tsukiyomi in Japan right now as maybe you would, and maybe Tsukiyomi is really, really good against it. Maybe normal Vermilion is really, really good against it, but we just don't see it. So it's kind of hard to make a prediction. It's a hypothesis, but my hypothesis is it's going to be a top 4 deck. Guaranteed, and it's going to be one to be prepared for, and it's very, very difficult to beat. So that is my tier list. That is where we are now and where I expect us to be with the release of Dudley Emperor at the midway point of this month. So again, I would love it if you drop in the comment below what you think our final tier list looks like and where you think Dudley Emperor is going to be placed. What is your hypothesis? And if you don't mind, while you're here, if you enjoy the comment and the content, and to welcome me back from my dental surgery and returning into the world of content creation, I would love it if you just dropped a quick subscribe, gave us a like, rang that notification bell, or if you're doing us on Twitch, I'll never say no to a follow. Anyway, my jaw is starting to hurt, so I do have to apologize. This is where I'm going to be cutting this video short, but we will be creating some new content coming up this week, and we have a couple of really, really exciting collaborations coming up with some amazing content creators that we're going to be doing as well. And I'm really, really excited to share that with you. Until then, this is the Crit Diva, and I am wishing that the crits are always in your favor.